Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Backstop. I'm Bruce Maxwell,
I'm Paulie Jackson.
and today our guest is Arthur Hightower II. My man, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you guys inviting me to your show today.
Oh, for sure, man. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. Little bit of background. Grew up in Rochester, New York, played football at Florida A&M. Worked a little time in the NCAA, and now he's the senior director of player engagement for the LA Chargers out in the NFL, out West Coast. So today, we're having conversations. We pride ourselves on having real conversations. Tell us about how you got into your work from the college level to the NFL level after taking the pads off yourself.
Man, hey, I appreciate that intro. Give a shout out to, going to high school in New York, former years spent in Fort Lauderdale. So I really consider myself a Florida native. Even my high school homeboys, who I still rock with to this day. It's funny. We've been best friends since 7th and 8th grade when I moved up there. And I still got my accent from Florida, right? Never picked up a New York accent.
Florida boys.
Yeah. So how I got to where I am today, man, I played football, as you know that, played at Florida A&M University, played free safety there. I was privileged to walk on, earn a scholarship, start a couple of years, graduate magna cum in graphic arts print management. But decided I wanted a career in sports. Back in the early 90s, they didn't really have too many sport management programs. But right when I was graduating, I got involved and enrolled at the University of Minnesota. Thought I wanted to be a coach. Did that for a year. I figured coaching wasn't really what I wanted to do. I was dating my wife at the time. She was still finishing up school. Transferred to Florida State University, where I finished my sport management degree.
Good old Seminoles, baby.
Yeah, a little bit. I just went across the street, basically. Rattler to a Seminole. My teammates from FAMU always, give me a little grief about that. but I got my graduate degree at Florida State. But while I was in Minnesota, man, this is just like the power of networking, right? I'm just going to give you guys the whole story, right?
All right.
So I was in Minnesota, and a childhood friend of mine that I went to elementary school with in Minnesota actually played football there, was working in the marketing department. And he was getting a job at Coca-Cola. But he said, hey, man, they had wanted me to apply for this NCAA internship, but I'm about to take this job at Coke. You should try it. And I said, okay, cool. I got the application. It was past the deadline, so I couldn't. But in order for me to remember it, man, I took the application and I put it in my my utensil drawer for my forks and spoons and knives. So I made sure that I saw it every day and would not forget it, right? And so I did move to Florida, like I mentioned, to finish up my degree, but I didn't forget about that internship. And I applied. And I was selected as an intern at the NCAA. This was back in '98. I just got married a year. Well, I got selected as an intern in '97 because I got married in '96. And there I was off as an intern at the NCAA. My wife had just finished up school, and we moved out there. At that time, the NCAA headquarters was in Overland Park, Kansas. So we packed it up like the Beverly Hillbillies. We drove that car from Florida all the way out to Overland Park, Kansas, and made the move. And it's a crazy thing about just how networking goes, right? So my guy Moses Taylor, he was working at Coke. I was at the NCAA doing that. And then during that time, the NCAA transitioned. The headquarters was in the process of transitioning to where they are now, Indianapolis, Indiana. So my particular intern class, they allowed to stay on an extra year, which was cool. So I got a chance to stay on. And by that time, I figured out I wanted to work in academic advising. I was a good student athlete, As I mentioned, I graduated magna cum. I played ball. I thought I could relate to student athletes, and it was cool. So working this conference as part of my intern duties. And this gentleman, he was observing how I work, and he came up to me, after a year of an intern, got a bunch of rejection letters for jobs. He's like, hey, I like the way you work. I got a job for you. It's kind of like, oh man, I believe it when I see it type thing. Like that sounds good, but I'm still an intern.
For real.
Now,
trying to get paid now. I'm trying to get paid.
Trying to get some money, right? My wife was working. She was working on television. We had just had a kid, so I'm like, man, I gotta make some coin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, okay, I'm gonna have a job for you. I said, cool. He said, I got a guy that's leaving like in 3 months. I said, all right, cool. So he calls me back. He says, you ready? I got the job. He said, cool. He said, I said, where? He said, at the University of Maine.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Right? Like, what? University of Maine? I said, hey, man, it's still the United States. It's still US dollars, right? So he said, hey, look, it's Maine, right? So we want you to feel comfortable. So they flew me, my wife, and my infant daughter at the time, all us up there just to make sure that was the right position. For me, it was not about it being Maine, right? It's about me getting started, getting that experience on my resume, because I knew that I wasn't going to be stuck in Maine forever. I just needed my start, right? And there it is. I got my start in Maine, and I worked that. But I'm going to tell you how powerful as I continue this story, right? And y'all could jump in with any questions, because I feel like I'm just telling this big story, right? But so from Maine, I'm working there. It's a year. And luckily, I had experience of living in upstate New York in Rochester. I had done the coldest day ever for the state of Minnesota. It got a Wikipedia page. Check it out. I'm not lying.
I used to live out there, man. I know the pain.
Bruh, it was negative 30 without the wind chill. I'd never been that cold in my life, right? I mean, we stayed a week below zero, where the high never even reached zero. So it's like,
shout out to the new U.S. Bank Stadium. They got some warmth in there, man.
Right. So there it is. So I'm in Maine, and I started applying for gigs, and I happened to interview at Michigan State University. And I'm like, all right, this is cool. Nick Saban at the time, he was the head coach. A friend of mine, Kevin Carr, he ran the academic side of it. And the crazy thing about Kevin is we were just chopping up on the phone, and he's like, oh man, I'm trying to hire this position and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bruh, you think I want to stay in Maine? Like, you didn't consider me, right? He's like, oh man, I didn't even think about it. So I got the interview. I mean, I'm like, dang, we just that cool that like you don't tell me about a position you're hiring, but don't even consider me, right? So I went out there for an interview, and I didn't get the interview. I mean, I didn't get the job. But the AD for academics say, man, I'm really impressed with you. I really want to hire you, but we just really need a more seasoned guy to work with Coach Saban. He said, but I'm gonna refer your name out. You just took it as the letdown, right? You all been let down, like, no, I just want to be friends, that type of thing, right? So, but lo and behold, I got back to Maine, man. Within that week, I got a call from the University of Houston, and sure enough, he's like, hey, you looking for a job? And the guy's name is Todd Stansbury. He's the current AD at Georgia Tech. And he's a Canadian guy, but he had like a Texas drawl to it. Okay. And the guy replaced at Maine, his name was Todd. So I thought it was him calling me, because this is a dead winter. You know what I'm saying? This is December. So I'm like looking for a job. I thought Todd was just messing with me a little bit. But no, it was really a job interview. So I flew down to Houston. and I got that gig, bro. And you think about it, I got 2 gigs without ever applying for a job, right?
Wow.
That's the power of networking.
The
And
power of networking, but you can't take away, Arthur. Like I've been looking at, I did my little research on you, and from what you said, man, like you're no stranger to hard work, man. I mean, coming from, all the way high school to even going to college and walking on the team and then getting a scholarship, what I mean? That takes hard work. And then, from there, taking an internship into getting a position. And then, what I'm saying, moving up from every position that networking is cool, but your work's got to speak for itself too. So, being no stranger to hard work, man, y'all been working hard, getting ready for this season, which kicks off for you this weekend. Mm-hmm. And man, it's major. I mean, coming off of these past 2 years of a lot of turmoil, a lot of stuff going on in everybody's life, different stuff. You know what I mean? Things been coming from different directions. I'm sure with the amount of networking and family and friends, throughout your life, you probably been directly affected by the stuff that's gone on within these past 2 years. What's it been like dealing with, your players, your job, your family, and some of the conversations and things you've done preparing for this season, and, the things that you've been going through day in and day out for, young men alike within your position?
No doubt, man. Like you mentioned, hard work. My old football coach used to tell me, man, luck is when, preparation meets opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. That's where luck is. And I definitely had to work hard. And one of the things I always try to stress, even to my son, even to my daughters, is that, man, your name goes before you, right? Mm-hmm. Your name is what lasts a lot. So all these people that took chances on me, my name went before them. And even when I was in Houston, I went back to the NCAA and worked there. And then I got my job at the Chargers, all that same way. There's a different story. Didn't apply for anything. Somebody mentioned it, thought I'd be interested, got the shot and did it. And then, certain things in your life prepare you for certain hardships or certain things you go through. Like last year with COVID, or like with the coronavirus spreading through, and the social the social work going on, like the social justice work going on in our communities, not only across this nation, like across the world, right?
Across the world, yeah.
Yeah. Just like how for myself, like just my oldest daughter, she was graduating school. My youngest daughter, she was finishing high school. She didn't even have a traditional high school graduation, right? We standing there watching her graduate on YouTube. That's crazy. My son was transitioning to high school, which he's in now. So it's a crazy transition period for all of them, right? Like I got 3 graduates, and they all had to graduate differently because of the situation. But one of the things it does, it brought our family a lot closer, right? Because, traditionally, when you graduate college, you move out your parents' house. But, I was lucky to still have some additional time with all 3 of my kids, right, living at home, which is cool because, when you get this age, you move out, you start living your lives. So I appreciate that time. But you talk about like the impact on the young men that I work with. I still call them young men because I'm an old guy, right?
16 years, man. You put in your work, man.
Don't short me. This 17 seasons.
Okay.
Don't short when it comes to them league seasons, right? So, but it just the impact is made. You see the conversations change in the locker room. About like, man, like it's relating to understand, the Black Lives Matter movement, or just being able to ask those questions, the enrichment of the relationships that already exist. Because one thing that I know Bruce can mention, like in the locker room, it's just different. You say what you need to say, how you need to say it, right? So the conversations are a little bit genuine because like Bruce in the sport of baseball, he's probably a minority of minorities. Ain't too many like brothers in there. He's probably dealing with a lot of white men, Hispanic, Asian culture. So it's different. It's a different melting pot. So the conversations are different as far as how you get to understanding each other. And with ours, we don't also have that big a diverse locker room, but the enrichment of the conversations of what was going on in our world, in our communities, because given where somebody may be from, right? Like, I mentioned I was in Minneapolis. I mean, you see what, the whole thing with George Floyd went down in Minneapolis, right? And I'm thinking, like, watching that, like, man, I've been in that area before, you know what I mean? Or just some of the other communities that some guys grew up in, and just being able to share that with each other. So
we don't even have those conversations, man. So like
wow.
having you on here to kind of piece it together a little bit, it's personally it's intriguing to me because like I've always played this sport. So most, like you said, I'm a minority of a minority, pretty much of the minorities in the game of baseball. So like these conversations don't get had in our locker rooms. From Colin Kaepernick kneeling to my kneeling to George Floyd to Jacob Blake to these conversations don't get had at the baseball field. Because even the Latin dudes, even the black players, like nobody wants to speak on it because I've told this to people before, like the atmosphere baseball has created, especially in the big leagues, is you fear when you're a minority, you fear that if you voice your personal opinions and or stances, whether they be political or not, somebody of the wrong person hears you, you're replaceable.
Right. Yeah, and I can understand because y'all got like a whole system.
Well, you're replaceable, man. Like
right, and you can get like a bad name on yourself, shed or a stereotype of this type of person.
Exactly, and it could just be from conversing with one of your teammates. Like it ain't even like you ain't got to be like F this president or this law is BS or whatever. You ain't even got to do all that. Just bringing it up in conversation. Like I'm gonna tell you, when I was in the George Floyd thing, George Floyd happened. I was in a locker room. I had a couple of my white teammates. They would come catch me like walking into the stadium, like quietly, be like, "Hey Bruce, can I talk to you real quick?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, what happened? What's going on? You all right?" Like, what's good? And they would never approach me in the locker room. They would always have to catch me by myself. And it was like, it was a big ass secret because my guys knew me, but they knew how important it was to me because I was one of two on my team, my coaching staff, And so those conversations don't get had on the baseball field, dude, especially at the professional level. Like, doesn't happen because everybody is there to protect themselves. It's a very selfish yet a team sport. But at the end of the day, a lot of times, man, it is baseball is politics. So it's like and I mean, I'm still battling that, to this day, like just that label. But it's just like, dude, it's like unheard of to have those conversations in the locker room. Because at the end of the day, dude, be completely honest with you, a lot of people don't care.
Yeah, and you're right. You're like, some people don't care, and that's like the unique, I like to say, beauty of, like, for me, football. Right, I played every sport growing up, but obviously matriculated to the point of working in professional football. Like, everybody depends on each other, right? Everybody in a way has to, like, you may have whatever your personal beliefs, political beliefs or whatever, but when it comes time to strap up that helmet on Sunday, that's out the door.
Exactly.
Like, because I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm not going to block for him because he said this or whatever, because we all want to win. It's one of those unique sports in that sense. Like, you got to do it. Like, let's say in basketball, you may not like a guy. You may say, hey, he passing to him. And always look to pass somewhere else. In baseball, you could throw high and tight, or you just be like, or whatever you want to do, right?
Well, that's what we had in the day I took a knee, man. I told all my teammates before I did it. I had a big old meeting with my whole team, coaching staff, trainers, everything. I told them what I was doing. I told them why. And I said, after the game, I said, the media is going to come to you guys. I said, I want you to be 110% honest. I was like, I don't need you to go to bat for me. I said, I don't need you to lie for me. I said, I'm a grown ass man. I was like, I did this. I said, because I was doing this for personal reasons, for people that look like me. I said, for a bigger purpose than, myself. I said, but I don't expect you to, if you don't believe in what I did, say it. Yeah. If you don't have the same views, voice them. I said, this is my personal thing. I was
on the other side of it, if they did, you also want them to voice that too, because that's the new thing, right?
Yeah.
People just been quiet. We don't need people quiet. Like one of the things we knew growing up, period, is right from wrong. It's some things that's just right, there's something that's wrong. And that don't transcend nothing. Race, age, color, religion, whatever it is, some things are just, right, and there's some things that's wrong. And we know before our eyes what's right and what's wrong. It's those other beliefs sometimes that affect us from how we call it out. But we know deep down inside what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
What do you think for yourself as player engagement? 2020 was a tough situation for me, honestly, and my family. And then personally, to start off with the George Floyd, I was living in Minneapolis as well. And it hit me pretty deep. I had left my position in childcare. I felt undervalued there. So I moved forward and help people. And then, my bro Jacob was shot. I know a lot of players reached out to us and our family during that time. And, that kind of led me to where I'm going now, with my organization, Edify. Mm-hmm. But for you, you got to see the direct impact of these, incidents that have been happening, right? But not at the forefront, not always at the forefront. We've had Emmett Till, we've had those type of situations, but in 2021 with the new millennials, how did you deal with the players and their reaction and some of them having a tough time? I'm sure that there's a couple players that were really struggling through this time emotionally, mentally, dealing with the fact that it could have just very well been one of them.
Absolutely. I mean, we all come walk around.
How'd you play in that?
Yeah, like we all walk around with that, right? Like, nobody don't know that, quote unquote, I work for the Chargers. Not that gives me any kind of special, privilege or anything like that. Nobody knows that, Bruce is a second round baseball pick. Nobody knows what you're doing with Edify. They just see what they see in that moment. So being able to have those conversations, like, I coached from last year at the time, brought it up. We didn't hide from it. We got a team commission. His office is like right outside of mine pretty much. We just had those honest conversations and we made it available and we stayed available to be able to do it. And partly what helped us with our getting through it was that we already were kind of like a team that talked about certain things anyway. I mean,
and I want to say real quick, Arthur, shout out to the Chargers, man. When it first went down with my brother, you guys made a video first and foremost with my sister Letitia in it. And it was all the players speaking of, she had a speech at the press conference in Wisconsin. And it talked about how we don't want your pity, we don't want your sorrow, we want change. Y'all created a video on behalf of the Chargers that stood up and stood for things, especially in a time when the NFL wasn't pushing. And that meant a lot. I want to tell you that meant a lot to me and my family. I still remember that video. I still have it. as well as shout out to Justin Jackson, who's been actively working with us and your organization already. So shout out to y'all and Justin Jackson. I just want to say that this isn't just what Arthur's saying. They actually have been standing on business. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Like Justin's one of our biggest like voices in the locker room when it comes to this, right? Like when it comes to social justice, and like he lives it, right? The one thing that we try to make sure, or I try to make sure when I get our guys in, is like football is like what we do. Like this is what I do, right? But it's not who I am, right? You know, you always learn like how to describe your who. And I actually take my rookies through a program called Galvanize. Is helping like female reporters and our guys come together because it's the first time they may have to deal with female reporters. Like, but everybody's young people trying to start off in their careers, right. But it lets them understand like how to define their who, right? What is your who? Like, this is what we do. What we do can always change, right? Mm-hmm. But who you are, really, you kind of stick to a little bit of a core. You can grow, right? We all grow. We learn different things, but we always need to know who we are as we go through our life. So, yeah, appreciate it.
That's huge, man. That's knowing. One of the biggest things I pride myself on every day is who am I going to be today? You know, and it's like times like this and with the difficulties in our country at the moment, especially for people of color, it's like a lot of people are acting off of emotion and they're not doing much because they don't really know who they are and what they want.
Yeah. And sometimes that could be a process. I mean, you know, you can, you know, trying to figure that out because, you know,
especially as athletes. Especially as athletes.
Yeah. You know, especially as athletes, because we all got like employers, you got a league, you got a symbol like us, we got the shield, you know, how does all this stuff mix in together? But the good thing is that enough voices have been shared to try to get a bigger movement about certain things that, like I said, to go back to see, you know what's right, you know what's wrong. And it's pretty simple. It goes back to like them childhood days of sitting in the sandbox. You know it's wrong to throw sand at the other person you're playing with, right? Yeah. You know it's right to share your tools. I mean, it's kind of that simple, right?
Yeah. And that response, man, goes into your currency. You know, you're stamping your currency with your guys. You guys are openly having these conversations. You're openly teaching them about who they are, or at least shining light on them to focus on who they are. Because at the end of the day, you know, for me, I preach to people all the time, like, I'm not who I am in my jersey. Like, when my uniform comes off, I'm Bruce Maxwell from Alabama, country, stand up for what's right and wrong. I love my mama, like, and I love helping people. And I've always, in my whole career, man, the one thing if I had to take from my parents and my mentors is they always told me never to lose who I am without my jersey. And I played with people, I've played against people that everything that they stood for was in their uniform.
Right. And that becomes like, that kind of becomes their identifier, right? Exactly. I just always want to be identified by, like, you know, my good name. You know, I'll never forget, my dad always told me the best job you ever have is to get paid for who you are, right? You know, it's almost like, you know, he had this little saying, you know, always said, you know, you find a job you love, you never work a day in your life, right? So, and for me, I just added a piece where if I could just be myself, I can love myself and I can work and I can get paid. Like, that's kind of like what I'm doing. And that's why I think I've been successful to be able to do what I've done the past 17 seasons with the Chargers, and then a couple of years before that working in college athletics. So because I'm able to touch the lives, and you mentioned the currency, Bruce, like the currency, the biggest currency I think I always have is not so much what we get 2 times a month. It's the relationships that we build throughout the years. Right? That's currency. That goes into the whole thing we talked about, like I was sharing earlier about networking. Like really, I was kind of paying for the job that I had, but it was based on me having that currency of a relationship that somebody's able to just to make a phone call, drop my name, and that worked. You know what I mean? Like that's that has a lot of currency, and a lot of times who it comes from and whose name you're putting forth means a lot.
Yeah.
It means a lot. So being able to have your name and that goes into knowing who you are goes a long way.
No, that's huge, man. My parents always said it, dude. You never can take money or possessions with you, but what you can leave behind when you do leave the earth is the relationships and how you make people feel.
Yeah,
and that's something that you can't take away. You can't put a monetary value on it. It's just, and that goes back to just being yourself, man. Like finding people that, being able to free yourself and be who you are.
Yeah, because like when we get our rookies, we take them through like it's a mandatory curriculum we have to do. That the league does a great job. Our rookie success program, our rookie orientation program, they do a good job, and we facilitate myself and our head team clinician, Dr. Herb Martin, do a great job of facilitating that. But it's the other conversations that we have while going through that that I think allows them to grow so much more. I mean, you're talking about, Bruce, you understand, you're a young guy. Last year or the year before, you didn't have a whole lot in your bank account. Now you got a little bit more. Maybe nobody knew who you were, but now a lot of people know who you are.
Yeah.
A year ago, you just had a mom, a dad, a sister, and a brother, but now you got, 50 cousins that you never know you had, and aunts and uncles and everybody else and friends that you didn't know you had either, right? So it comes with a lot on a young man and just having to navigate that as they transition from being, in our sense, because you come from the college game into the professional game.
The sucking part about that situation is, Arthur, is that even happens when your family goes through a catastrophic event, like an international, tragedy. You know what I'm saying? And that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes about like where we are and the influence of media, the influence of being known or being connected to something. But yeah, I just want to throw that in there. But yeah, I had a question about, you're very much in pushing forward your players about after football and during football. What is the next plan for you? And that's a huge thing for Bruce right now, because he's dibbling into that in his own career as well. And, what he does during the off season, what his plan is for after. 70% of the NFL is African-American, but about only like 6 to 30% have the higher office positions and the positions within organizations after, and that's probably very similar in other sports as well. Obviously, baseball doesn't have that initial African-American percentage, but what are some of the ways you continue to like instill that strength and the communication and push guys towards like not only did we play in this league and create a large amount of the wealth for the league, how do we maintain that and continue to push forward and empower our athletes?
Well, just like looking to just be part of the game. I mean, the great thing is now is the evolution of the game, and you look at some of the front office positions and the people that are in them. Like I just had a conversation with Troy Vincent, right? Troy Vincent, he's pretty much number 2 guy in the NFL, played a long time in the NFL.
I know Troy.
Yeah, Troy, and Troy is real about what he does. You look at like a lot of people that are navigating, and slowly but surely, former players are turning to careers other than just coaching and scouting. Right? You look at, I think, what the GM of the Browns, the Dolphins. I don't want to short anybody, but at Washington, right? They're all African American. I don't think I left anybody out. It used to be the Giants with Jerry Reese. I don't know if he's still there. But we're sending to those positions so more people get in the pipeline in different ways to grow this game that, necessary a lot of times built, right? So, and then the next step at some point, you're going to have a African American owner, at some point. Don't know when it will happen, but I'm hoping at some point it happened during my lifetime, right? To be able to see that transition, to see that, because you see it in other sports, you see it happening, to be able to see it in a sport that it is has a high number of African American players in it, So, but to go to another point, you was talking about like. And even in Bruce's situation, same thing as our players. Like your next career always be, in some ways, it begins when your career with this, they start simultaneously. It's like your exit. You get like you're trying to build your career, but you're also trying to make sure you exit into something, right? Because Bruce, you don't mind putting your age out there. How old are you?
30.
30. All right. So whatever Bruce does, right, in his next career, more than likely he's going to do that longer than he played baseball professionally, right?
Okay.
It's few exceptions, right? Tom Brady in his 22nd year, right?
Oh,
but even then, if Tom Brady lived to 90, 100, he still will be an ex-player longer than he played, even with 22 seasons under his belt, right? So more times than not, it's what you do after the game that more people know you from, right? And that's probably what grows. So being able to use the relationships you build now, the opportunities you have to get into certain businesses or learn things, whether it be a change agent, right? Whether it be in politics, whether it be in your local community, wherever it be, like you can do that, right? And to be able to think about it, what it is. But that goes back to what we talked about earlier, knowing who you are, right? That makes transition a lot better because you know who you are when you walk away from this game. And Bruce can probably attribute to this or contribute to this is that some guys, when they walk away, they don't know who they are without that jersey. They don't know, and it becomes tough because they don't know. But the players, the men or women, depending on what sport, to walk away and know who they are without their jersey go a long way. I mean, look who walked away from a WNBA career to do what she did, right, at the top of her game, right?
Maya Moore.
You see it? You see it?
Maya Moore, and we know who she is.
Right, because Maya knew who she was, right? The jersey didn't make Maya Moore, Connecticut or, what's the Minnesota team? Not the Lynx.
It is the Lynx.
Yeah, okay, Lynx. That didn't make who she was. Who she was is what she was continuing to do.
Yeah.
Right? She can always, she can shoot some threes. She'll probably beat all three of us in a horse, right? Whatever,
Big shout out to Maya Moore for stepping up and showing out. Big real talk.
Right. So she knows who she is. So that goes into any time a professional athlete is looking to transition. So during this period of time, I think it goes to a lot of my job responsibility to point out to the young men that I'm able to work with, like to understand their who. So as they transition one day, whether they transition on their own, whether they are kind of forced to transition, there will be a transition. Nobody's sitting around watching 60-year-old football players. There's no league after this league. There's no seniors tour. It's none of that, right?
You're not coming back, Arthur. You're not making a comeback.
I'm done, man. I can barely get up and down the court sometimes. My son, and, he's a 14-year-old, and doing all this other stuff with the ball that I ain't even think about doing, right? So no, it's just knowing that. That's some important things.
Your position, man, is huge, and I love to see it. And some sports are starting to take it a little more serious because there is the biggest topic, right now in sports is mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people that are victims to those mental health issues when we're talking about professional athletes are the people that spent their whole career without any sort of guidance about what happens or how to transition into being a civilian when you're out of your uniform. And it's like for me, for example, I'm taking a dive into the financial services department. Like, so I'm 30 years old. I'll be 31 when I get back on the field. I might have 5 years left. I might have 3 years left. I could have 8 years left. I'm getting a new arm, like whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's now to the point where I'm like, okay, what do I like doing? What do I love doing?
Mm-hmm.
How can I connect with people while I'm still in uniform? And how can I make that transition easier? And I have those successors. I have those people in those positions to mentor me, to help me connect with people, this and the other. And your job is so important because, especially in the NFL, you guys' lifespan in the NFL is like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, it's
on average.
yeah. I mean, a lot
like,
of people don't make it out of their rookie contracts, right?
that's what I'm saying in baseball, but baseball's similar, man. I tell people all the time, I was like, doesn't matter if you get drafted in the first round or the 40th round, man, you don't make any money until you get to the big leagues. And when you get to
nobody knows how many bus rides you've been on, Bruce, right?
Hey, it's crazy. We just had an issue when I just got traded over to the team I'm in. There was a team in our league, man, in Bowie, in Bowie, double A team. They went out on social media and they had a few guys living in cars because
I did see that story, right?
Because so in double A, you make maybe $1,500 a month if it's your first year in double A, and that's before taxes. And
right.
So you don't make any real money until you get to the big leagues, which is sometimes never.
Right. A lot of people don't know how many people that get drafted that never make the big league.
Listen, let me tell you, I heard this stat a couple years back, like way back. 1% of every draft class for the game of baseball, for professional baseball, 1% get a day in the big leagues.
Wow.
Like throughout their whole career, not, that year, no, every draft class, which is, you got 30 teams, you get 40 picks, 40 rounds, 30 rounds, whatever, what it used to be before COVID. So we're talking about thousands of players getting drafted, and only 1% of those people get to the big leagues for at least a day. Like, I'm fortunate. I've got a little less than 2 years. You got some guys that play for 15 years. But in the NFL, bro, like you got less rounds. You have your very few, your Steve Smiths who went 18 years as a wide receiver. Like you said, Tom Brady, 22 going on strong, whatever it is. You don't have that. So it's like, I hopped into my business outside of my uniform because at the end of the day, I want to help guys like me, athletes that aren't those $200 million baseball players, those $100 million football players, those $200 million NBA players. I want them to be able to understand that there is a way to transition out of the game and be able to put yourself in a financial secure situation where you can then do what you want to do something that you love to do, and not have to stress about working 2 jobs, without going broke, that's why I do what I do, because I found out who I was a long time ago. I've never changed. I love helping people. And like, your job is so important for these men, especially being the demographic of being 70% African-American. And you being an African-American yourself, it goes a long way when you're in a situation where what you're trying to do, your leadership looks like you. And that's one of the things that is hard in baseball. And that's why, like, I take my mentorship serious with my young kids, because when you look up at the top, it's not like when we were growing up, when you had your Griffeys, your Prince Fielder seniors, your Kenny Loftons, or all those. It's no longer like that. And so it's hard to have that encouragement. But when you get up there, all you think about is yourself and preserving yourself. There's nobody to help you work on that transition. There's nobody that you can look to, you feel comfortable, because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, whatever sport you're doing, whatever job you're doing, if you're looking at the top and there's nobody that's like you or nobody that can relate, it's discouraging at times.
Yeah, that's the key about this position, and to the men and women in this job. Like, we have 2 women that are heads of player engagement for their respective clubs.
Huge.
And just to be able to, like you say, have that relatability, to understand that goes a long way. In some cases, like, yeah, it's good that sometimes they look just like you. You can relate. That's why, like, I'm from Florida, right? And a lot of guys are from Florida, so it's easy to kind of speak the language in a sense. But, like, whatever it is that you can to be able to relate goes a long way. That's why I feel special. I'm like one of 32, and of people that do this in the world. Yeah. That's how I look at it, like, in the world. Ain't no other player engagement, and with no other professional football leagues. I'm one of 32, and I think all of us that do our jobs feel like that in the National Football League. Feel very special to be able to do that, and then to be trusted to do the jobs that we do, to make sure, the Bruces of the world know who they are as they move on. You know what I'm saying? And I think other sports are catching on, because, Bruce's sport is unusual. We're not going to get anybody 18, 17 years old, like baseball, and it used to be basketball, right? We don't, we at the earliest we get somebody that's 20 years.
You need a real man's body to be out there with those boys.
Be a man.
Yeah. I mean, some guys do have a real man's body in high school or can play, but it's just that we know that's what we're getting. Like, our talent pool, because how the system's set up, is going to come from college, right? Like, and I'm just going to use Bruce's sport, right? Because he's on here. Like, Bruce's sport, like, they could not be in school. They could, you can just be walking by a baseball field, a bunch of kids pitching, and hear something whiz by and be like, oh, let's sign that kid up, anywhere in the world. Like, but with us, it's usually we're coming from the college system. We're not just going to watch somebody run down the street real fast and be like, hey,
right.
Sign him up. Nah,
I'm in a hotel full of 17 to 20-year-olds right now. Right, yes, doing my rehab, like Latin dudes who are 17 years old, just flew from home. Kids that came out of high school, like,
and their life skills are totally different. You got to be 21, let's say, to drink, get licensed, go in certain places, whatever.
Yeah. They have no idea, and it's like that's the biggest thing. Like, you guys got kids straight out of college and stuff. And by the way, shout out to University of Alabama. Let's go.
Listen to this guy.
But you guys have those years that are mandatory, like, to build those guys into young men to step into that sport. This baseball is very individualized. Yeah. And so you might have a 17-year-old from a foreign country. You might have an 18-year-old out of high school you just gave $2 million to. You could have a 21-year-old like myself coming out of a Division III college. And but all of us at the end of the day, like, we still need that person or that field office, for lack of a better word, to help us in that direction. So while we're in uniform, we can start building on when we get out of our uniform. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And then to handle, like, what's going on in the world, to be able to have those conversations.
That's
period.
That's huge, because I struggled with the things that were going on in since 2016.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it just
I had nobody
totally
talk.
different. It's just totally different. Be able to have those conversations. I mean, and then you're talking about a sport where you're dealing with folks that might not even speak English coming over. You know, there's language barrier, there's culture barrier. It's always culture barriers. You know, like I moved out from, I grew up in the South, but you know, my kids are West Coast kids. My son was born out here. My daughter, my youngest daughter moved out here when she was like 2. My oldest daughter was like, I believe she was like 8, somewhere up in there, 7. They're West Coast kids. I got Cali kids, right? They nowhere close to like being Southern kids.
They've been living good, sunshiny days.
That's it. You know, they're teenagers and a 20-year-old, and they hear the crack of lightning and thunder when we go to Florida, and they're scurrying. You know, they just never heard nothing like that. They just thought it was the end of the world.
Don't even tell them about Rochester walking in them blizzards, man.
Oh, they had no idea. Like my son just really thinks that my son thinks that walking in the snow is something that's fun. He has no idea.
You know, the struggle when that snow get inside them socks and you still got 30, 40 minutes to go.
Yeah, we started the season this year. Before we wrap, we started the season this year. I was in Syracuse.
Oh, okay. So
in April, and we played our first series. It had literally, we were driving up to Syracuse. It was AAA for the Mets. We were driving there from New York City. It's like 4.5 hours, whatever.
I-90. I know the throughway.
Bro, we were driving past snow.
Yeah.
Like in April.
Yeah.
And I'm in my car like.
Bro, that ended my baseball career when I moved to Florida.
Man,
Florida, New York.
Man, like, it was terrible.
The ping of that bat in the wintertime, that was it for me. Aluminum bat in the winter.
Had them hands stinging, huh?
I was like, nah, that was a sting that I won't forget. I was like, nah, I'm good.
We got up there for training camp this year in March for the AAA team. We came up there for March or whatever. And man, let me tell you, I was walking around in a huge, like I got up there and I was like, it's going to be fine. Like winter's over, blah, blah, blah. The first day we got up there, it was like 38 degrees. The wind was blowing heavy. And I'm like, I'm not equipped for this. I had to call Nike and was like, yo, I need y'all to send me like 3 of your biggest parkas y'all got. And my teammates were making fun of me, like guys up north. And I was like, bro, I'm cold.
Like cold is cold.
We have practice today.
That's them Bama boys. Them Bama boys.
That blood is thin.
Well, it's not even that. It's like the fact that we have. I tell people all the time. I was like, it's not the fact that it's cold. It's the fact that we have to go practice.
Yeah.
Like I can put clothes on and be warm throughout the day, but we have to go out in baseball pants, socks that don't cover anything. We can't wear jackets. We can't really wear gloves because we have to throw.
Yeah.
And it's like we're not moving. Like we're not body to body.
Right.
Like,
I'm not really trying to hear that from y'all. You out in Arizona, you out in Cali.
Well, now I am.
I'm still in Chicago, man. Y'all better cut it out, man.
All right, yeah. We talking all this warm weather talk. Huh?
Hey, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yo, having Arthur Hightower on here is so important because I want people to understand that there are positions like this where you can not only provide for your family, but also help people. I think that's so important in what Bruce is doing, what I'm doing, and what the All-Star in our neighborhoods are doing are, being able to not only provide, push forward, and engage with people to teach and to build, but also to show these youth that these are the other cool jobs you can do. If it's not always about being an athlete, but you can empower athletes, you can empower other people, you can empower communities, and that's the way that we want to teach and the narrative that we want to promote out here every day. So Arthur, thank you for coming on us with us on the backstop. I gotta say, man, Sunday's coming up. You got the offensive rookie of the year versus the defensive rookie of the year. How you feeling? How you feeling, Arthur?
I mean, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good anytime you got number 10 back there throwing it around, but just the 53 to make it up. I'll travel with this 53 anywhere. So I'm ready. I'm excited about this season. I'm excited about where this is going to lead for us.
Man, Arthur, I can't wait to get out and do some player engagement with you as well. Edified will be out there soon working with Justin. We won't give away the details on that, but tell Justin I said what's up.
I sure will.
Shout out to the Chargers, man. Well, thank you guys for another episode of The Backstop, and we'll holler back.
All right, then. Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
All right, man.